Everything's all set up. And all right, let's do it. Hey guys, this is Bruce, and welcome to Convocourses podcast, where every week we get together and we talk about governance, risk, and compliance concepts. And today, what I want to do is something I haven't done in a while, which is an overview of NIST 800 Risk Management Framework. This is where I'm a subject matter expert. This is something I've been doing for many, many years. I'm currently working for the government as an information system security officer, and I do this 5 days a week. And I've been doing it for years for many different departments of the U.S. government. So I can really tell you a lot about this if you're interested in getting in this. But I've also done work in other industries and sectors, including healthcare, manufacturing, aerospace, the private sector and the public sector. So I know not just risk management framework, but I know other frameworks and standards as well, and how I can get your organization compliant with those frameworks. I know what the assessors look for. I know exactly where to go, what to do in these situations, and I'm here to talk to you about. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. So today I'm going to focus for a little bit before I take your questions. I know I'm going to get a whole bunch of people asking questions and stuff, and stand by. I will get to your questions. I'm especially good at helping people go from point A to point B. If you're trying to get into this field, I can give you some pointers for free live here. Any questions you have it's open topics. Or if you're concerned about AI or something like that, I get some of those questions as well. I can answer those questions and give you my 2 cents as somebody who's been doing this over 20 years, doing governance, risk, and compliance, as well as cybersecurity, more technical side of the house. I've done both. Let's get into the first part of this, which we're going to talk about risk management framework. What is it? How do you do it? What do you expect? I'm going to give you a bird's eye view, a high level view of what it is for those of you who don't know. And maybe a refresher for those who do know what it is. All right, let me see if I can share my screen. Okay. All right. So hopefully you guys watch me on Facebook and YouTube can see this. But what this is, what I'm showing here on my screen is a diagram that shows all the 7 steps of the risk management framework process. And it's prepare. And I'll go through each one of these, and it'll start making sense as we go through. But all 7 steps are prepare, categorize the system, select the controls, implement the controls, assess the controls, authorize the system, and monitor the controls. And in the risk management framework, all of this comes from the NIST 837. And let me back up a little bit. So NIST 800 series is a bunch of cybersecurity publications that are guides for a organization to get their systems more secure. So it's not just technical. It goes into some of the physical things that you need to do. It goes into personnel security, making sure that people are vetted before they come into your organization. It goes into all aspects of protecting every angle of your organization. So the NIST 800 is a series of publications. You've got NIST 800-100, NIST 800-37-53, -60. 64-137. There's a whole bunch of them. There's all these different publications. The one that we are going to focus on right now there's 2 of them actually. One is Risk Management Framework, NIST 837. And what you're looking at here on the screen, if you happen to see this, and all of these 7 cycles that you go through, these steps of the risk management frameworks, comes from NIST 837. It breaks down these in great detail. The other one goes into the controls, which is NIST 853. So let me start here. So NIST 837 talks about how an organization prepares, categorizes, selects, implements, assesses, authorizes, and monitors controls. Now, the first step is prepare, and I'm going to very briefly go through each one of these. Preparing means that You, as the cybersecurity person, as a GRC professional, will make sure everybody is on the same page. Hey, this thing's coming soon. Here's some of the things we need to do. You might have like a checklist or a document that you send out to everyone to say, hey, this is what we're going to do for this is the name of the system. Here's how we're going to do it. You're reaching out to everyone to make sure all the stakeholders are on board. Stakeholders are like people who have some sort of responsibility to that organization, to that particular system. It could be system administrators, it can be engineers, it can be network engineers, it could be managers, it can be program managers, project managers. You've got to get the word out that, hey, here's the date that we're going to do it. Here's where we're going to start the very first meeting, all that kind of, that's prepare. It's getting everybody on the same page that, hey, this is going to happen. Categorize the system. Really categorize the system should be a security categorization of the system, because what you're doing is making sure is seeing where the system is as far as is it a low impact, a moderate impact, or a high impact on your whole organization. And to give you an idea of this, let's think about like a website. Like if you had a website and your organization was advertising publicly available information on the features of this thing. It was a publicly available system, and that website you have, it's not super. If it goes down, the impact to the organization is not huge, right? And let's contrast that to something that has a very high impact. That would be like a system that has top secret information on it. That if somebody got wind of what the system does, or if it got hacked or something, it would have a very bad impact on the system if that data got leaked, because they're dealing with logistics for troop movements, or they're dealing with very important information. That's their high impact system. It's normally going to have classified information on it. It's not going to be publicly available at all. It might not even a website or anything like that. Sometimes you can't even say the words that are associated with that system. It's a very sensitive system. So we're going to categorize our system from high to low to high. And it really depends on the information that's on the system that determines what is the security categorization of the system. To go deeper into this, you can use NIST Special Publication 860 and volumes 1 and 2. And that has a really in-depth, detailed breakdown of all the different information types that you might have that's going to help you to identify that system. Next, let's go to selecting the controls. Now, once we've categorized this system, we know if it's a low, a moderate, or a high system as far as its impact on our whole organization. Now we're going to, based off of that, low, moderate, or high, we're going to select a specific control group. And to select those controls, there's a couple things we can do. There's lots of guidance on this, but we're going to go to the SP. The main one is the NIST Special Publication 800-53. And that is a category that actually has it's a catalog of all the security controls. You're not going to use all the security controls. Like one of the misconceptions when I first started doing NIST, we were super panicked because we weren't. I remember we were in. I think I was working with the Air Force, and they were talking. It was an aerospace organization working with the Air Force, and when they told us we were going to do the NIST 800, and we got an idea of what it was. This was many years ago, and there's 1,000 controls. Or something like there's like 1,000 control. If you include all the enhancements, it's a lot. The thing is, you don't use all the controls. You only use what is necessary. If your system, for example, doesn't use Wi-Fi, right? For whatever reason, your system does not authorize the use of Wi-Fi anywhere on that specific system, you don't have to use those controls. If you don't have remote access to the system, you don't need any of those controls. It's going to be not applicable. So you don't use all the controls. You're only going to select those controls and tailor those controls that apply to your system. So even if you have a high system, like the system has been categorized as high, and you have top secret information on it, it doesn't mean you're going to use all 1,000 controls. It just means you're going to have a baseline of controls that pertain to any kind of high, moderate, or low system. And you might not even use all the controls that it tells you to use, because it is tailored. You're tailoring the controls to your system. And that's one of the beauties of the risk management framework. So once you've selected your controls, the next thing you're going to do as an organization is implement the controls that were selected. Now, this really usually takes the longest time in the entire process because you don't want to just implement all the technical controls at once. If you do that, you can end up destroying the system. You could lock the system out. So it's a lot of testing that has to go and that's involved with that. But also, it's not only technical controls. It's going to also include physical controls. Personnel might also include personnel controls. It might include PT controls, where you're looking at privacy and transparency rules for your organization. It's a lot of other things, security features that you're looking at. So this really is going to take a long period of time to do the implementation of the controls. And then you're going to assess the controls. Once all the controls are implemented on your systems, you're going to figure out whether or not they've been implemented correctly. Because it's one thing to say that they're there, and it's another thing to see whether they're there or not and if they've been implemented effectively. So that's the next thing you got to do. The next thing we're going to do after we've assessed the controls, and with assessments, there's different kinds of assessments. You have self assessments where you're coming in, you're doing a self assessment, but also there's one where you have a third party organization come in and conduct the assessment. Once it's done, you gather all the evidence and the documentation that came from your assessment. You're going to put it forward to get an ATO, an authorization to operate. And that different organizations call it different things, but essentially it's going to be a formal acceptance of the remaining risks on the system. And sometimes when it goes to the authorizing official, they'll say, no, I don't want to accept. This is unacceptable. We have all these high findings here. We have all these vulnerabilities. You put it on a system. You put it on an operating system that is about to be end of life. I don't accept this. We got to go back to the drawing board and we need to fix this or that. And so the authorizing official might not check, the boxes on that. Or they might say, look, I'll give you a temporary authorization to operate, but you guys have to fix X, Y, and Z on this thing. So that's where the authorization of the system comes in. So let's say they gives it a thumbs up and they say, yep, it's good to go. Now, the last thing you're doing is monitoring the controls. And this is really the thing that most of us will fall into this category. If you happen to be a cybersecurity person, if you happen to be a GRC person, wherever the case may be, when you're monitoring the controls, that's mostly what we do. that's really mostly what we do as cybersecurity professionals. And what does that mean? What does monitoring the controls mean? So I'll give you a breakdown of what my day typically looks like as a cybersecurity person. So I'll meet with the other cybersecurity people, and we're talking to our program manager, or it could be a program manager or some leadership, some form of leadership. We're going to, and this has been the same whether I was at NASA or I was at the Army or the Air Force or wherever, and then where I happen to be now, it's the same thing. We'll all come together at the beginning of the week and we'll talk about issues that are going on, where we're at, what's the status, what we need to do to go from here to there. Do we need help? Those kinds of things, right? We'll get together and then we go and start doing our job throughout the day. It's meeting system security people. Other system security could be meeting the firewall person. It could be meeting the system engineers. We're not doing everything. The point is, it's a big team and many people are doing many aspects to maintain the resilience of our system, right? So we're having to meet with all these people to make sure everything is good to go. And that's where a lot of our time is spent. Now, we might have to do things like a security impact assessment, where a new system, something has changed and we got to look at it. We got to read through, okay, what's going on? Oh, they're updating this particular software. Okay, I remember we had a meeting about this last week. Is this approved or disapproved? What is this, the current version that we need to go to? Is this approved on this other list? Or we might have to check and see what's going on. That's continuous monitoring. Another thing that we do is documentation. As a GRC person, it's a lot of documentation. And that's why one of the critical skills you need to have is communication. We're talking with people. We're having to write and articulate what's going on. We don't want to be too technical when we're talking to managers. We don't want to be too clueless if we're talking to the super technical people. So a lot of times we've got to get in there and do a little bit of research and come back with the appropriate information. We're trying to bring everybody on board so we're all speaking the same language. That's the name of the game for continuous monitoring. Another thing we might do is we might have access to a SIEM like Splunk, or a SIEM like ArcSight, or a SIEM like whatever. Name your SIEM. A SIEM is a security information event monitor. So what it does is it collects all the logs throughout the organization, and it's allowing us to see in near real time what's going on. Like people are logging in, or people are having failed login attempts, or maybe somebody tried to log in at 3 a.m. at night. We want to see what's going on. So that's another thing that we do for continuous monitoring. Continuous monitoring is one of the biggest things that we do. Now, let me give you another idea. I just kind of want to give you an idea, an overview of what risk management framework is and how it works. So we could take some of the mystery out of this. Another thing to keep in mind is the family of controls. Now, this is coming from the NIST 800 special publication 800-53. And right here, you have each one of the control families. Now, some of these break out into like 25 different individual controls, and I'll show you that in a second. Some of them only have like 3 or 4, but just to kind of give you a bird's eye view, so you've got access controls, you've got training controls, like where we have to make sure everybody's on the same page with awareness and training, audit logs, you've got assessment authorization monitoring, you've got contingency plan controls, incident response controls, planning, program management, personnel security. You can see that it's not just all technical controls, but let me show you what it looks like when we get into this. Let's look at AC controls. We're looking at the AC controls right now, and it breaks out like this: policy and procedures, account management, access enforcement. Some of these I've rarely used in an environment. I've been in many different environments. Some of them are you just rarely use them. There's no reason to use them, like publicly accessible content. Most of the environments I've been in have been either moderate or high level systems. So I haven't had a lot of exposure to publicly available content. But you might go to an organization where that's all they do is publicly available. So AC2 would be a very important one. Data mining is another one that I haven't had a lot of exposure to. I just haven't been in an organization that needed it. But some of these, yeah, I mean, I had a lot of exposure to things like all the -1s. So another thing to mention here is there's kind of a pattern with the way they break out each one of the controls in the families. One of those is that if it's a -1, it's normally policy and procedures. That's usually making sure the organization has a policy and or procedure, or some of both, and it's been authorized by the organization. Like you can't, if I'm in an organization, I just go ahead and write one and then put it out there, and then I can't, it's got to be authorized by the organization. They have to say, yep, this is good to go. I'm signing off on this. Yay, verily, everybody in the organization must use this. If it just comes from me, some random employee, that's not going to fly. So -1s, there's a -1 in incident response controls. There's one in your PE controls, which is physical security and environmental controls. There's one in, all the families have a -1. Another pattern that you'll see as you are in this world here is that these are best security practices that you'll see in retail, in healthcare, in PCI DSS, in HIPAA. You'll see the same things over and over again. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Like it's some of them are more robust in certain areas. There's a lot of overlap because they're using the protection of system information is not going to change that much. Where it does change is that in retail, of course, they have to deal with something that usually the Department of Justice might not have to, which is like point of sale devices. Point of sale information is something that, places like Target or Walmart, they have to really be mindful of. They have to really be on their P's and Q's with that kind of stuff. Whereas they probably don't deal with a lot of classified information, right? They're not dealing with that kind of stuff, but the government does. So there's special pots within the risk management framework that are dealing with things that a retailer like Target or Walmart doesn't. And then HIPAA, that's pertaining to protecting your patient information when you go to the hospital or some medical institution. They're dealing with certain things that, protecting x-rays, right? It's something normally classified environments they're not really worried about x-rays or the size of the images that come from an x-ray machine or something like that, and then protecting that particular information of the results of that x-ray machine. The medical devices, they're not dealing with that kind of stuff. So there's certain areas that something like the risk management framework is going to deal with that you wouldn't have to deal with at retailers. So that's some of the patterns that you'll see here. One really good, and this is one last thing before I get to you guys' questions. And I see some questions and stuff. Somebody put a hat on me on TikTok. TikTok's crazy, man. One thing I want to point out to you that it might be helpful is that there is something called the NIST CSF, or Cyber Security Framework. And the difference is it's not the same as the risk management framework. And the difference is that the NIST cybersecurity framework it's almost like a container because it has categories instead of security controls. Whereas the NIST 800 special publications, it's more it's telling you a prescription. It's telling you, oh, you have Wi-Fi, you need these controls. Whereas rather than being prescriptive, the NIST CSF is more like saying, what functions within your organization do you have? Do you have it? If you have an organization, you should be able to have an identify. Look, this one's not good. Let me see if I can find a better picture here for you guys. I'm trying to find a good picture that breaks down all of these controls, preferably in the CSF 2.0. So here, bear with me for a second. I will be explaining what I'm seeing on the board here, but I want to get something people can see, and that's not very clear. All right. Yeah. Okay. I'll just go back to the old one. I apologize for that. So what we're looking at here is the different functions. Now, here's a better one. All right. Got it. These are the different functions of the NIST CSF. Again, NIST CSF and NIST risk management framework are different. But here's the thing, you can mix and match them and they merge perfectly together. And that's one of the great things about the NIST CSF is that it can match with PCI DSS. It can match with risk management framework with the NIST 800 series. It can match with all of these different framework standards and regulations because the way that they made it is brilliant. It's broken down in the functions. You've got identify, protection, detect, respond, and recover, right? And then the new one has another function called governance. And all they did was break out governance from identify and protect and all the other places where they have governance. And there's some other changes too. But this right here, NIST CSF V1, for the purposes of explaining what it is perfect. So right here, let's look at identify function. What are we doing in the identify? What is our organization doing to identify to meet this function? So they have it broken out into categories. You have asset management, where we're going to identify what assets we have in our environment. What does that mean? It means that we're identifying what hardware and software and firmware that we have, right? Very important to know what we have in our environment, because if you don't know what you have, how can you secure it? Business environment, we're going to identify what business we're in. Also super important. Again, governance in 2.0 is broken out into its own thing, but for the purposes of this, governance is really going to be the same thing. Like whether they break it out into another functional area or another category or not, it really identifying it's really the same stuff. And that's where we're having the leadership make sure that they are identifying how they're going to manage all the IT infrastructure. And that's one of the aspects of governance. 2.0 goes in way deeper detail about governance, by the way, which I think is great. Risk assessment. We're going to identify the risks in our environment. So you kind of get an idea of what these functions are. Protect. Now that we've identified what we have, how are we going to protect those things? We're going to make sure we do awareness and training. We're going to make sure we have data security. That includes things like encryption. Then we're going to detect anomalies. We're going to respond to those anomalies. And then let's say we get attacked. How do we recover if we've gotten attacked? So that's how the functions and categories break out. But let me show you something even more interesting about NIST CSF and how it can match with NIST 800 or HIPAA or whatever. So let's take this one function and break this out into a category. So we already identified like the identification function, which is to identify things like a business environment. What business environment are we in? What industry and what things go into that business environment, right? If we break this out into a subcategory, it goes into deeper details saying, look, the organization, what is IDBE1 or identification function? BE is the category, which is business environment. What are we saying? What does NIST CSF need to see? The organization's role in the supply chain is identified and communicated. Where are they at in the supply chain? Meaning, if they're getting software from Microsoft, right? Are they vetting Microsoft? Are they making sure that Microsoft's product is secure? Or wherever, it might not be by Microsoft, might be some other small organization. We got to make sure that wherever we're getting from them is secure. And then if we are supplying to a customer, we got to make sure that we are securely supplying that to the customer. That's what the supply chain stuff is all about. But check this out. Here's the part I wanted to show you. So here you have the subcategory, right? And it's already identified. We have to identify where we fit in the supply chain and how we communicate our security in the supply chain. It references right here, it's referencing other frameworks and standards that you can use to actually apply those to your organization. Let's say you don't use NIST 800. It's referencing NIST Special Publication 853 Rev. This is the wrong Rev, by the way. We're on Rev 5 now, but you get the idea. So Rev 4 CP-2, right? That gets into contingency planning, right? That contingency planning, making sure that we can come up if our system goes down or if our supply chain, our vendor goes down or whatever happens, like in the case of CrowdStrike, for example, what happened with that vendor, we need to be able to have an answer for that. We need to be able to come back up quickly. Like, what are we going to do for that? So NIST 853, if you applied your contingency planning, you might have been prepared for something like that, right? Now, let's say you don't use NIST 800. You don't use risk management framework. You're not in the government. Maybe you have a international environment. You might have to use ISO 27001. So right here, it references ISO 27001. Now, granted, this is the old ISO 27001 from 2013, and now they're already on 2022, but you get the idea. So it's referencing specific controls that you can use from this standard, from this international standard that you could use. This is really helpful. This CSF is super helpful if you are working in an environment where you have to have clients that are not just government based. They might be based internationally. They might be based in retail. It references, because you're using this CSF, you can then cross-reference based on the functions, like to identify, to protect, to detect, to respond, to recover, and to govern. For governance, you can cross-reference a PCI DSS system and a government system or a hospital based system. And that's one of the powers of the NIST CSF. That's why I personally love it. It's a great way to teach people all about governance, risk, and compliance. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and take some questions here. So anything you guys have, I'm noticing a lot of people jumping on. I've got Professor Black Ops. How you doing, man? I'm gonna be doing a interview hopefully with Professor Black Ops next week. I'm hoping, like, if you're up for it, man, I would love to have you here on my show and talk to people. Have a lot of questions for you. Been watching your awesome content. Larry, how you doing? He says, is this the same as FSMA? Yeah, so FSMA Well, FSMA is actually not the same thing. So FSMA is actually a law. It's the Federal Information Security Modernization Act of 2014. It used to be 2002. It upgraded to 2014. And the NIST 800 is a guide to get you through FSMA. So if you are compliant with NIST 800, you are compliant with FSMA, if that makes sense. FSMA in the government has added this extra layer where there's a lot of reporting involved, but the NIST 800 actually has controls that talk about, hey, you make sure you're doing reporting and things like that. So there are controls that address that. So if you the nutshell is this: if you follow the NIST 800, if you're compliant with those controls, with the applicable controls to your system, like I said, not all controls, because you have to tailor it based off of what security category, like if your system is low, moderate, or high. If you're compliant with that low, moderate, or high, then you're compliant with FSMA. So it's kind of a yes and no kind of thing. That's why I was kind of like, well, is it the same? It's not the same, but the NIST 800, it is in the perfect alignment with with FSMA. So if you got one, you've got the other. Hope that answers your question. Let me see. I got some more questions. Let me go to this one I don't normally go to, which is Instagram. Marshall White says, your GRC book is great. I enjoyed reading it. Oh, man, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. I put a lot of time, effort, and energy into those books. So if you guys didn't know, I do have some books where I talk in detail about all this stuff. Like here's one of the books right here, Risk Management Framework, Security Control Assessor, where it talks about a different approach. These don't replace the NIST 800 documentation, just so you know, right? So I'm not trying to replace it. You should definitely still get those free resources. But what this does is it articulates it in a way in layman's terms so you can understand what's going on. So one of the biggest challenges is interpreting what they say, because the way they write is like academia or something. Meanwhile, you and I, we work in the real world. So that's what this book does, is explain it in a way that's realistic and what you should focus on as an information system security officer and as a security control assessor. And then here's another one, NIST 800 security control families. Again, not a replacement for the NIST 853, but a great addition to understanding the control families. I don't go into all 1,000 controls. I keep it at a family level and say, look, here are the main things that you need to know about this particular family. And then this book actually merges my first book of risk management framework with the control family. So if you wanted to get the two books in one, that's what this one is right here, at a greater value. And then I've got one on cybersecurity fundamentals, because I get a lot of questions about people wanting to know, like, what are the best practices. They're asking fundamental questions. So I just went ahead and wrote a book about it. And here's another book that I wrote. No, I didn't write this book. This is this is one I'm currently reading right now, but AWS certified cloud practitioner. I need to get my cloud information, my cloud knowledge up. So that's what I'm doing. But I've got one on ISO 27001. I've got one on GRC. That's the same as this one. So tons of books out there. If you're interested, go to convocourses.net. Go ahead and check them out. I'll be having some discounts and everything for you guys real soon to up those sales. Let me see. I've got some more questions. Is it possible? Okay, on TikTok, somebody says, is it possible to get a job with a security plus with no real experience? Anything is possible. I mean, anything is possible. Is it probable is a better question. And it's hard. It's going to be difficult for you to get any job without experience. Okay. I'm just going to be completely real with you. You can't just get a certification and expect to get a job like that. So what they're looking for is experience. Just being perfectly honest with you. What you want to do in the very beginning is get your foot in the door by any means necessary. So one thing I always tell people to do is, if you happen to be a student, apply for any kind of internships and apprenticeships. If you're not a student, it's not the end of the world. There's a bunch of local jobs you can get, like those cable company jobs. Yo, that's a great way to get your foot in the door because you're having exposure to network engineering. I mean, you're not configuring routers or anything, but you are configuring modems, and modems are internet working devices. So you have to know about IP addresses and probably what a gateway subnet masks are, stuff like that. You got to know the difference between coax cable and Cat6 cable. And those are things that a network engineer has to they have to know that stuff. So that's a great way to get your foot in the door. Look for local help desk type field technician jobs when you're first starting out. I'm not telling you don't get a Security Plus. Security Plus is fire. I'm not telling you not to get a degree. Get a degree. Definitely, like if you have the resource and time and energy to do it, then do it. But if not, it's not the end of the world. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have a certification. What they're really looking for is experience. But if you can, get that Security Plus. It's not going to hurt you. That's for sure. Let me see more questions. I'll take one more from TikTok real quick. Somebody said, I'm a PLC programmer. What's the best way to get into cybersecurity for ICS? ICS is control systems. That's control systems, isn't it? So you might already have exposure. No, for sure, you already have exposure to cybersecurity. So what you want to focus on as a programmer is networking. Like you want to get your network skills up. Because I notice I work with a lot of programmers and they don't know a lot about networking, which always shocks me. I'm like, what the hell? How can you not know? How can you know how to do Java or whatever and you don't know like basic networking stuff? It blows my mind. But yeah, so what you want to do is sharpen up your skills on networking. Networking is probably going to be the place that you're going to want to focus on quite a bit. I'm trying to think of other areas you need to focus on. There's other aspects of cybersecurity that you want to be smarter on. Like for you as a programmer, you probably want to go ahead and get that Security Plus. It'll be perfect for you because once you take the Security Plus, it's going to open up it's going to make you realize you're already doing a lot of security. As a programmer, you've got to do things to protect the library of your DLLs for your code, right? You've got to do things like put comments in your code. And I know that some of these things don't seem like a big deal to you because you've been doing them so often, but these are very crucial cybersecurity practices to programming. Because if somebody can get access to the DLL libraries, they could hijack it. They could hijack things in the DLL library, and that is a perfect way to do some of the supply chain hacks that happen. So you actually are familiar with some supply chain security. You need to get yourself sharper on the networking side of the house because there's so many aspects of our job where we have to know something about networking. Then that might be the piece that you're missing. Security policies. Have you ever written a security policy? That's also important, even if it's a security policy for protection of the DLL library, the programming library that you have there. That's communication and documenting is super important. And that's why the comments inside of the program, inside of the source code is super important, because the idea is this: if you were to leave the organization, somebody else comes in and they have to pick up where you left off. If they can go through the code and see all of the comments that were left in there, that's huge, right? So cybersecurity isn't just about hacking or even knowing the network infrastructure or anything like that. It's also about resilience. And if you're doing documentation, you're helping the organization have resilience, so that if you leave or if your peers leave and somebody else comes in, they can pick up where the other person left off. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of things that you're doing that are already cybersecurity related, and getting your Security Plus will start opening up your horizons on some of the best security practices that are not only in programming, because it does cover that, by the way, but also in network engineering And they're not going to go super deep into network engineering. They're just going to talk about here's the crucial parts of network engineering, and here's how you can secure it. And then it's going to talk about operating systems, some of the hacks that happen with that, which you probably already know about, some of the hacks that happen with applications, and then a little bit of on physical security, a tiny bit on that. So all aspects of the best security practices is what it's going to cover. So it'll be perfect for you. All right, let me see. Got some questions over here from, let's see here. Going through some of my questions here. Bear with me, guys. Dahmer Sports says, businesses need to document and have evidence that you're meeting compliance of each objective. Yep, that's right. That's correct. So that's what GRC is all about. Governance, risk, and compliance. One of the biggest pieces is making sure it's trust and verify. And recently it's don't trust and also verify. It's zero trust and also verify. Verify being the key word. Because what we're doing is we're putting all the security controls in place, right? And we're relying on other teams to get all that security in place. And then on top of that, we're saying, look, here's the evidence. Here's the artifacts. That's what we call it. The artifacts to show that we have secured these ports, if that's one of the security features you have to do. We have the appropriate level of encryption on our Wi-Fi. You have to have documentation as evidence that is the case, because we have to verify that all these things have been put in place. And the reason why we've gone this direction in this field, it having started off way back, like in the late 90s, doing this stuff, right? Early 2000s. I'm dating myself, but that's the truth. Early 2000s when I started doing this. In the very beginning, you had something called certification and accreditation. And essentially it was a paper chase. We'd put all this document out there, and it was just all documentation. You have they had a security plan, and you would put, okay, we're doing this, we're doing that, and it was just us checking off the boxes. Meanwhile, what was actually happening in the real environment was different than what you were putting in the documentation from time to time. Because what was happening is that you would document things, and it'd be like a static policy that you would change every 2-3 years or something. Meanwhile, the IT is constantly changing and evolving. It's constantly, so the documentation and having evidence to back that up started coming closer together, so that was more real time. So that's where you have continuous monitoring. We're continuously monitoring the logs to make sure that things like identification and authentication are put in place. Whenever that means, like, if you log into a system, it's first of all, it's making you log into the system, because there was a time when that didn't happen. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but there was a time when you just turn the computer on and boom, you were in. They start getting hacked. Systems start getting I mean, people doing crazy stuff, right? Being humans. And so documentation is making sure that it's being logged. Everything that's happening is being logged. When you log in, if you misauthenticate, it's going to a log somewhere. If you go to a site, it's somewhere, somebody's tracking everywhere you go. When you go to a site, especially on a government system, you better believe it. Everything you do is being tracked, because we can't afford the risk of just allowing people to do whatever the hell they want. And so that's why documentation as evidence is super important. The logs are tracked. If you log in and out, it's tracked. Everything is documented, and you have to. The more people that are on that system, the more traffic it has, the more important the system is, the more you have to have people, the more documentation you have to have. It's just because human nature. People are going to do whatever the hell they're going to do. But if you have a log of it, and there's a disaster, something goes down, you can always recover. You can always figure out, okay, what happened? Where did this person go that there's illegal? Let me see. Professor Black Ops says, thanks. I will reach out to you. Okay, yeah. So it looks like it's game on. I'm gonna have another interview. I know those ones are some of my more popular podcasts. So I'm gonna have Professor Black Ops on here. Hopefully, I'm shooting for next week, but if that's not a good time, maybe we can do it another time. And I usually just pick. I get somebody who's in this field, some veterans in the field. I get some people who are new to the field, and I just pick their brains so that you guys can have more knowledge on how to get in this field, what to do, what kind of give you a different perspective on what's going on, and not just coming from me. And I'd like to do more of these in the future. Let me see. X-Men says currently, and that's courtesy of Larry, by the way. You were referred to by Larry, who's on here a lot. So I definitely took his word for it. Shout out Larry. X-Men says currently in cyber with a clearance. From your expertise, what GRC roles are in high demand with high pay that won't be too much impacted by AI? So I think every aspect of what we're doing is going to be impacted by AI, but I think it's going to be in a positive. There's a positive aspect to it. I don't think it's all negative. I don't believe it's all going to be people's jobs just suddenly vanishing. And the reason why I say that, and I might be wrong, but the reason why I say that is because there's a high level of assurance that's necessary for cybersecurity. And right now, AI is not it doesn't have safety features in place that can protect, say, I don't know, stock trades or something on a large level. Right? I'm sure people are using it right now on a small scale, like if you're trading $16,000 or something. But when you get into the multi-million billions of dollars being traded, I'm sure they're using tools for AI, but not enough to where they're getting rid of all their people. There's a level of assurance that is necessary to have a human being managing those AI tools. And it's the same thing with cybersecurity. I believe that more tools will be introduced to us so that we could use it on SIEM technology, for example, or IPS IDS systems. But I just don't see it right now completely taking people's jobs, like what's happening with the stockyard. I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was some news where at the ports of entry at let me see if I could show you a picture. At some of the large ports, for shipping ports, like the guys who ship these containers here, like on the front cover of my risk management framework control books, they take this stuff to a port, and then those cargo has to be put somewhere, right? It's a super dangerous job. If they go faster, it's very dangerous, and there's a lot of different injuries there. What's happening is they start to automate that, and it's taken a lot of jobs. It's much faster to do it automated. It's much safer to do it automated. So there was a port, I think, in China where they cut 80% of the jobs or something, and it's all automated, and it's scaring the crap out of people because it really did take a bunch of people's jobs. I don't think we're there yet with cybersecurity. I'm not saying it'll never get there, but we're not there yet. So to answer part of your question, for now, I think within the next 10 years, I think that we're good. Right after that, I don't know. It's anybody's guess. After 10 years, I really don't know what the hell's gonna happen, man. I think it might be. Who knows what'll happen, man. But within the next 10 years, I think we're good because it's just not there yet, And as far as assurance, like you have to have a certain level of assurance. And even if we're already using AI tools, it's already happening. It's happening way faster than I thought. And I'm in the government. They're already using it. And but we're using it as tools to help us to do our work. I think every aspect of our life is going to be affected by AI, and there's no escape from it. It's just that good. But I think it's going to be some positive and some very negative, right? Some very, very negative, some very, very positive, just like with anything. And your question was, uh, what what GRC roles are in high demand? I would say GRC roles that are in high demand, I'm noticing as I'm looking around recently, is GRC roles that involve cloud and GRC roles that involve AI. Um, a smart move would be to learn cloud technologies, get a certification in it, get smart on it, and GRC and cybersecurity, and also AI. Get as smart as you can on AI. Um, because that way, even if AI does take jobs, quote unquote, AI, so you can be a part of the movement to put. Listen, what do you guys want me to say here? What do you want? What do you, I think that AI is going to impact all of us. I don't think that there's a way out of it. Like I think our goose is cooked, and I don't think it's not going away. It's just too useful. It's too helpful. It's being integrated in your phone. It's being integrated into your browser, into your operating system, into all the tools we use, into every aspect of our life is going to be affected by AI in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's the algorithms on the back end as you're scrolling through your favorite social media site, or you're actually using it as a tool to figure out, using a prompt to figure out what to write on Splunk, right? Or writing code or something like that. Every aspect of our life is going to be affected by it. And I say, learn it. Learn it. You can do GRC. Right now, I'm telling you, it's in demand. Like a lot of the job, I'm seeing so many jobs that are looking for a GRC person who can do AI, right? And I'm thinking to myself, dude, this just came out. How are they already looking for a person to do AI and GRC when this just came out? We don't have any established rules for it yet. And they're looking for people to do it right now. So that will be one thing you can do. And the reason why I mentioned cloud is because, well, number one, as I'm looking, everybody's looking for it. Like they all want you to have some kind of cloud background for what I do. So that's one reason. Another one is that most AI, generative AI in particular, is on cloud based platforms, whether it's AWS or Azure or Google or whatever. The way that they're able to function the way they do is by having a gigantic pool of resources. And the only way you can do that is by using cloud. So I would say your safest bet right now would be, this is what I'm doing, is moving towards more cloud-based stuff, cybersecurity, cloud-based, and then deeper into AI. That way you can be a part of the solution that we're going, we're going to move this way forward. Maybe we could just do it smarter. Maybe we can have safety rules in there to help to protect kids, to protect organizations who are doing big business, to protect all of us. It needs to happen. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm just some guy that's been doing this for 20 years. What do I know? You know, I'm just some dude. Let me see here. I got some questions on TikTok. I'm going to answer a few more questions. I've been talking for about an hour. If you guys have any questions or comments or complaints, now is the time. And okay, here we go. We got, yeah, thanks for that. Whoever gave me that donation there on TikTok, I appreciate that. More questions on TikTok. I'm looking for your questions. And it's a lot of people on here. Okay, here we go. Somebody said, how would you rate the current job market? It depends on the industry. I would say based off of how many opportunities I normally get, it's been reduced. I would say the overall industry is kind of like stagnant. It's just like flatline. It's just like it's not going super high or super low. It's just like It's not as high as it was before COVID, but I would say it's kind of like this. And again, it depends on the industry. Probably with FANG, that's Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, and sometimes they throw Tesla in there. And the reason why they group those together is because those guys are the main leaders of the stock exchange, the S&P 500. And whenever they go up or down or they lay people off, it makes big news. It's on ABC and NBC, and oh, they're laid off this many people and stuff like that. That one's probably, it's based off the stock market. So whatever the stock market's doing, they hire and fire based off of how their stocks are doing. So that one, I don't, and to be honest, I don't focus on it a lot, but I have noticed it's dipped a bit. Now in the government sector, bro, they're looking for people like crazy. They're constantly putting out. There's a huge need in the gov sector for that's why I'm doing this, because there's a huge need I'm seeing that I'm getting offers all the time. I can't possibly take all these opportunities. There's so many opportunities. And so to the point where I'll just share them out to my network. I'll just share it out to people. I was like, oh, this guy, this person might need this job or something. The gov sector is always looking for people. Now, the hiring portion of it is where they're having problems. They have a hard time getting people in because they have with government, they have to do a lot of vetting for each person because they have a lot more to lose. They work for the public, right? So if they hire some random person who gets in there and does something stupid, like leaks people's information or steals, you know what I mean? They need people they can trust. So there's a long time. It takes a long time to get people in because they have to vet every person. So a lot of times what's happening is they need people like crazy, but as soon as they try to get somebody in and that process takes longer than a month or two, people are like, I'm out. I got another job over here. That's kind of part of the reason what's happening. Another thing is they're very strict on, like, do you have a degree? Do you have this? Do you have that? They started to relax that. Recently, there was a news article. Let me see if I can find it, where recently they said, look, we're not going to look at degrees anymore. We just need people to get into this field. But that's how much they need people. Let me see if I can find it. Government, because you guys don't know I'm not lying to you. Jobs, because I know a lot of people are like, dude, I can't find a job. The job market sucks right now. And in some sectors, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely. But in certain government sectors, man, we have a huge problem. I'm seeing it. I've been in this sector for a long time, and we don't have enough people to do this work. I'm telling you, we don't have enough people to do this work. And that's been at the last 5 jobs I've been at. There's not enough people. And it really pisses me off because that means I got to do more work. If I don't have another person to help me, it's more work for me. So let me see if I can show you guys this. Here's the article. Here's one of the articles, and it's coming from theregister.com. And I don't know what affiliation they have with whatever politics you have out there, but I don't care. I'm just trying to get facts here. It says White House. The White House's fix for cyber job gap. Serve the nation in InfoSec. InfoSec's GRC, bro. So let me see. Now do your patriotic duty and fill one of those 500K open roles, please. Google it. It's out there. I'm telling you, like, they need people to do this work. And lately, like, a lot of young people are not trying to get in these jobs, man. They are not trying to work for the government at all. The Gen Z is not trying to get in these jobs, man. There's not too many Gen Z people where I work. It says the White House has unveiled a new strategy to fill some of the hundreds of thousands of critical cybersecurity vacancies across the U.S. Pitch cyber as a national service. The Office of National Cyber Director announces the Service for America campaign yesterday, a 2-month sprint that aims to connect Americans looking for decent careers with work in cybersecurity industry. Throughout our history, this is them quote, throughout history, generation after generation of Americans have stepped up to meeting the challenge of the day. National Cyber Director Harry Coker wrote on the blog post inviting. They are not very good at advertising this stuff. They're really not. They should reach out to people like me. I'd advertise this shit every day if I could. He says, today we face a challenge, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I'm trying to look for the part where they talked about not doing degrees as much anymore. And I'm not seeing it in this article. But you get the idea. They're looking for people. There's a whole bunch of gap. There's a huge gap of people that we need here. And we're not getting it. And this would be the same no matter who is in office, by the way. This is not a political thing. This has been going on before the previous president. It's been going on. They just cannot find enough people to fill these gaps. And it could be you. Like, you got to find this stuff. Let me see if I can find the actual link. If you go to whitehouse.gov, you can probably find it. Google it. They have a website that breaks down where you can actually sign in and just apply for these jobs. And not all of them require a degree. It's referencing the shit that I talk. Look at this. It's crazy. NIST, cybersecurity career week start October 14th and 19th. Look at this. Look at this. This is wild. I'm telling you, gov sector definitely needs people. It definitely needs, with or without a degree, it definitely needs people. Okay, let me see. Let me answer another question. Great question, by the way. Great question. Let me see. I'm on TikTok here. And somebody said, let me see if I can pin your post here. All Things JL says, if I have a computer science programming degree from 2006 and never got my foot in the door, how do I do it now? Well, I could tell you what I would do. I would get myself sharp on basic information technology. I'd get my foot in the door at a local job. It's going to suck. They're not going to pay a lot, but just getting your foot in the door is going to immediately open you up to a whole bunch of opportunities because you already have a degree. And then all you're doing is establishing your background in it, right? So what I would do if I were you is I would apply for, I would look for a local. There's a couple things you can do. You can do some sort of local help desk, or if you can find it, like a customer support technical job where you're on the phone taking calls, a call center type thing where you're walking people through how to fix their router or something like that. You need to get your foot in the door. Another thing you can do is a field tech job where you're laying cable or setting up people's internet, something like that, where you can put that on your resume. You need to get your foot in the door. That's the first thing you need to do. It's not going to pay a lot. It'll be local. You can't do no work from home type stuff. It's going to be much harder to do. But the very first time that you get your foot in the door, hell, you might even want to stay in that organization and level up quickly and start to make more money that way. But just getting your foot in the door is going to open it up because you already have a degree in that. And see, the reason why that's important is because once you get in, a lot of jobs inside of that organization require a degree. Like management jobs require, a lot of times you're competing with other people who have a degree. So that immediately opens up doors once you get inside. Another thing you can do is go ahead and look for these jobs here. Look for these jobs that I was just talking about, where they're talking about, hey, we got 500,000 jobs in the government that we need to fill. Go to Google right now and type in White House 500,000. You will find what I'm talking about. They have a link directly to whitehouse.gov site where they're talking about this kind of stuff, where they're looking for people like yourself to actually apply for these jobs. They're not that bad of jobs. You get your foot in the door, then you can just start leveling up like fast. So if I were you, that's what I would do. The door is not closed. You got to get in, but you got to walk through it. Like the opportunity is there, but you got to be the one to walk through it. You got to take chances. You got to take risks. And it doesn't hurt to at least to at least walk through that door, right? Even if you go through it and you're like, okay, this door's closed, this one's locked, this one has all these, just keep on trying. There's definitely opportunities out there for you. You're already 10 steps ahead of most people because you already have a degree. You've already been looking at this. And then somebody, New King, says to you, depends on where you live. If you live in DC area, try to get a security clearance. That's not bad. That's not bad advice. Like, I talked to Chris from TechWoke, and that's how he got in. Chris from TechWoke was not in this field. He had a degree too, as a matter of fact. He just happens to live in the DMV area, which is DC, Maryland, and Virginia area, which is really hot for jobs. If you happen to be in that area, I'm telling you, it's really hot for jobs, and they pay very well there. So, I mean, granted, the cost of living is super high too. But if you're there, that's what Chris from Tech Woke did. Google Chris, go to YouTube, type in Chris Tech Woke, and he's got a whole breakdown of what happened to him. So when I interviewed him, he was telling me how he wasn't even in this field. He was a student on a whole nother degree program. I think it was biotech or something. I don't know what. I can't remember what it was. Then he got out. He was trying to find a job in that area, couldn't find it. Got a clearance by working as a security person, a security guard, like physical security. Got his clearance that way, and then was able to get a land and information system security officer job. Now, I'm oversimplifying because I think in the between he got a security plus and stuff like that. But he got an information system security officer job, and that's how he got into IT in the DC area. Let me see if there's other things on that one. Let me see here. Okay. Let me see. I got some other things here. Been talking for about an hour. Thank you guys for your questions. I really appreciate it. Samuel says, how can an analyst address a situation where the agency, such as the DoD, issues a directive requiring financial overlay to be applied to some of their systems that don't have financial security controls? That's a real difficult situation. And if there's now a new requirement for your agency, like you work at I'm assuming you work for some company, and they had an initial scope of work where they are meeting the current DoD directive to do risk management framework for IT or whatever it is, right? And then suddenly they're like, hey, verily, everybody must do financial overlays. Over what we're talking about here is, I know I'm speaking like another language here. Financial overlay, or any overlay, is like an additional level of security that they throw in there. They're saying, okay, you got to do this security. Now we're going to do an overlay where you have this other level of security you got to do too. And I would say, what is the scope? What was the original scope of work? I mean, if I was the manager here, now if you're just a regular worker, you got to do whatever the hell the manager is telling you to do. But as a manager, if you happen to be in that position, one of the things you could argue is like, hey, that wasn't in the original scope of work. The original thing we did was to do risk management framework, DoD security controls, which does not include this overlay. So what you might want to do is go back to contracting and say, this additional work here is going to cost us more time and money to do. We need more time to do it, and we might have to hire another person in here. We need more money. We need to expand the scope of work because this is going to increase our whole workload, which is difficult to do. And I understand why organizations, it's hard for them to do it. You got to go back to the table to ask. But if you have a legitimate concern about this, because one of the worst things you can do to your employees and to your bottom line really is to pretend like you can go ahead and do that extra level of work when you know it's going to be an additional month or a whole nother person to do this work. Right now, if it's insignificant and there's only a few controls, maybe you can kind of sprinkle them in there. But If it's a lot, if it's a significant amount of more work that applies to the system that you're on, Money 2.0 is the system. It has 1,500 systems, and you guys are currently putting risk management framework on it. But the Department of Defense says this overlay is going to add 1,000 more controls on you. And payments 2.0, whatever it's called, it applies to this. You might have to go back to the drawing board. You might have to increase the scope of work. You might have to go back and say, look, maybe the next fiscal year, we can start this project, but we're going to need more time to figure out how to do it. Like, I think that you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and say, here's to figure out what's the scope of work. First of all, how much more work is it? Like, if it's only 5 more controls, maybe that's no big deal, but you do mention to them, hey, this is more work for us. If it's 1,000 more controls, 300 more controls, you might have to go back to them and say, listen, this is a lot more work. We can't even start this until we finish what we have here. And this is going to have to start in the next fiscal year. We're going to have to redraw up the contract. Now, if you don't have that option, that's a difficult situation. They might have to hire somebody else to do that kind of stuff. They might have to go hire someone and you can just say, hey, this is not within our scope of work. It's way too much. Or maybe we can do a few more additional, like in this fiscal year and the next. You're gonna have to work something out to change the scope of work, and that's a difficult place to be in for any organization. But I've been in those I've been the employee on the receiving end of those, and it's a never-ending challenge. My man Larry says, I currently work for the government and have been a part of some of those hiring sprints. I can speak for a fact that part of the issue is the pay gap. Oh my Lord, he's right. He's absolutely right. There's a big pay gap between what FANG is willing to pay and the private sector pays versus what the government will pay. But listen, if you're trying to get your foot in the door right now, just take the job. Take the job. And then what you can do is, after you get that job, is go work for FANG and make more money. You know what I mean? It's I'm just putting out possible opportunities for you. And then he goes on to say, the expectation from applicants is to walk in the door making 100K plus. That is not the reality. Maybe for FANG position, but not for government. He's speaking my language. I hear you, man. That's exactly right. And for beginners, listen, this is an opportunity for you to get your foot in the door. Take advantage of it. And he says, trying to echo the same sentiment is getting in the door as a priority, and then being able to access roles much easier. Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. But people don't want to hear that. Work the system. Don't let it work you. Amen. Hey, listen to this guy right here. Larry, you should probably have a podcast, man. Great information. Let me see more comments. It says 2 years max, then AI Scrum already. Oh, somebody's talking about AI again. So Live Spot and Shop says 2 years max, then AI Scrum already. I think it's progressing very quickly. Like, I have to admit, it's progressing exponentially fast. But all those services, those AI services, are costly. They're going to cost money, right? So even if it can do a project manager's job for Scrum or my job doing GRC stuff, there's a lot of things that have to, within the next 2 years, there's a lot of things that have to be thought about. There's a lot of issues here. And like I said, there is a risk to automating everything. You still have to have people to manage that automated system. There's still, AI is developing very fast, but one thing that they're having a challenge with is the safety features with it. Case in point, there was an article where Snap, and I might have talked about this last week, I don't recall, but I want to show you guys the article I'm talking about. I just want to show you like what we're dealing with AI. It's not a button push to fix this. I'm very excited about AI. every time a new tool comes, I'm messing around with it. I'm learning enough to where I could probably start a whole nother podcast just talking about it. I just enjoy it. It's like a toy for me. But there are challenges. Speaking from a technophile who loves this stuff and is all about that AI life, I'm telling you, there's some huge challenges where it's not a push button thing that's going to suddenly magically fix all our problems. It's not going to, there's a lot of risk involved with it. And it's not just jobs. So let me see if I can find one. So Snapchat, I think it's called. I don't use Snapchat. Maybe I should. But Snapchat had an AI feature where they just immediately put this AI feature in there, and where people can talk to it. And just like in all great sci-fi movies, things go horribly, horribly wrong. So what happened was a researcher gets on there and acts like a 13-year-old girl and says, "Hey, I'm 13 years old, and the Snapchat AI is talking to them, and like normal, like, how you doing, Jessica, or whatever her name is, and how it's talking to her like normal, and then this person's pretending to be a 13-year-old girl, and let me show you the screen here, and then acting as the girl says, "Hey, I'm 13 and I have a boyfriend who's 31, and I'm wondering if I should have sex with him yet," right? A 13-year-old girl asking an AI chatbot on Snapchat if it's okay, like, what should I consider about my 31-year-old. You see where this is where this can go horribly wrong, right? Well, it does. It goes horribly, horribly wrong because the AI says, now here's the article right here. The AI is, rather than stop talking or advise her to do the right thing, it says, oh yeah, it's encouraging her to do it, but just do it safely. I mean, what do you think about that, right? This is a societal issue. Here's the article right here. And this is a problem. New artificial intelligence created by Snapchat has allegedly offered some dubious advice to what it thought a 13-year-old girl, detailing, among other things, how to cover up bruises for a meeting with Child Protective Services. This is way worse than what I just said. Okay, I didn't even know about this part. And how to lie to parents about a trip with 31-year-old man. We got problems here. Like, I love AI, but it's not ready yet to take your job, is what I'm trying to articulate. Their safety features are not there yet. It is dangerous. So, especially if you're trying to, there's so many ways this can go wrong. And I'm not saying I love AI. Like, I think it's great. I'm not one of these doomers who thinks that everything's bad about it, but there definitely need to be safety features inside of it that manage it properly. And that's where you and I come in as AI, as cybersecurity people, to help manage these technologies. That's our whole job: governance, risk, and compliance. It's going to include safety for machine learning. That's what's happening right now. But right now, the technology is moving faster than cybersecurity. It's moving faster, much, much faster than the safety protocols that are being put in place. I mean, I think that places like Claude AI at Anthropic and OpenAI they're doing an okay job at the safety features as they release different iterations of their technology and stuff. I mean, I've been messing around with it and stuff. There's ways to get around the safety features still, but I'm saying they're being mindful of what needs to be put in there, because there's so many things. Like, just use your imagination on what you could use it for, and then consider that somebody is going to do it, because they will. Anything that they can do with this technology that is evil or destructive, they will do, because they're human beings. So we can't just throw it into our banking system and then replace tellers. We can't just, I mean, we can, but it wouldn't be a smart thing to do. Consider another thing. Do you guys remember like what happened? This is so fascinating. I remember I walked into Walmart and all the tellers were gone except for like one, right? All the tellers were gone. I mean, not tellers, all the people who take your money were gone. They're gone, and they're all replaced by automated systems where you just scan your items and then you pay and you walk out the door. That was during COVID. Like, all that happened during COVID, and I was scared. I was like, what the hell? Like, I mean, just very quickly, I was like, yo, they just took like what, 25% of the jobs? They're gone. And then they had an aisle sweeper that was going through the aisle. They were testing it out, but it was going through the aisles and scanning all the inventory, right? It was clear that what direction they were trying to go. It was full automation, right? There were still people around here getting the carts from outside. There's still like one or two people taking your money and stuff. And there's still like, the guys in the yellow vest who are making sure that nobody's stealing stuff. There was employees around, but I could see automation happening, and I was like, oh my God, is this what's about to happen? Well, what happened was Walmart lost too much money because people knew how to go around the systems, and they start losing billions of dollars. And I don't know if you noticed, but they kind of cut back on those automated systems. They kind of cut back on them, and they start bringing back the actual employees to process your transactions, because it was a loss of money. So my point is, like, automation and AI is not going to solve all of our problems, and even the problems it does solve, it introduces new problems. So I think the smart thing for us to do is get smart on AI, because it's not going anywhere. It's going to be on our phones. It's going to be in the banking system. It's going to be in Walmart. It's going to be in every aspect of our lives. So right now, what we need to do is cybersecurity, GRC people, is to get smart on it, as smart as possible, and integrate it into, like, learn it as much as possible, so that when we get asked about it, because we will, we have answers. We have a response. We can get, we're not left behind. It's kind of the same thing. The same thing happened with cloud. Like, cloud is now everywhere. All of it. I'm using it right now. This whole thing is based off of a cloud service, a SaaS back end. All the streaming that I'm doing now is based off of that. Whenever you go to Netflix is that whole business model is SaaS. It's all using AWS, I believe. Azure, Microsoft Azure. That's every damn where now. You don't even know you're using it, and you're using it. Gmail is also on the cloud. Like, everything we're doing is based off of a cloud back end, because it's just a smarter way to scale and do business. And so that's what's going to happen with AI. It's a smarter way to do it. So it's going to replace menus. It's going to help you with search. It's going to help you with your job. Like, learn it as much as possible. And when it is integrated into your business, your life, your job, you'll know how to use it. Just like what happened with this. I mean, some of us are old enough to remember when smartphones, everybody didn't have a smartphone. I remember one of the first times I went to Southeast Asia, when I saw everybody using it. It was like an epidemic. It was like a disease. I just got on the plane, and everybody was looking down at their phone. And I was like, I was walking through the aisle, like, everyone's on their phone. And the adoption was much faster in Southeast Asia. I'm there a lot, so especially back then, and for job and business and everything. And I just walked on the plane, and meanwhile, the US was still trying to getting used to the smartphone and everything. And now when you walk on any plane anywhere, everybody's on their phone. Hell, sometimes when you look in the car next to you, somebody's on their phone, driving on their phone. Like, it's everywhere. Let me see here. Other questions, comments, complaints. Somebody said, where to start my cybersecurity or IT career? I am working on my IST degree and Security Plus cert. If you are in school, this goes to anybody in school right now. It's like I just repeat myself like a broken record on this. You are currently, and you already know what I'm going to say if you watch this regularly. If you are currently a student in school, if you are currently studying for your Security Plus, if you're getting a degree, right now is the time to start to try to apply for jobs. Right now is the time to start getting experience. How? That's the good question. You got to be creative with it. There's a few things you can do. One is if you're in a school, usually have a working student program, apply for it. They have an internship or a apprenticeship, apply for it. Look for it. They sometimes they don't advertise it well. Go to the front desk, ask for it. If you're online school or accelerated course, call them and ask if they have one. Try to get in. Sometimes universities and schools will have some sort of a partnership with a company. Try to get involved with that. Like, try to be a worker there, get as much exposure to the field as possible. Another thing you can do is projects. Those work. Any kind of projects you have, you can put that on your resume. Like if you actually implemented a firewall as a part of your project, you name the project. We installed a Palo Alto firewall on a small classroom network. You can put that on your resume. You got to do the work. Like, experience means doing the actual work. Apply a STIG. Like, another project you can do is apply a security technical implementation guide to a system, to a virtual system or to a real system, and then put that on your resume. Like, you're familiar with implementing. You've implemented 4 or 5 different security technical implementation guides for Amazon, or for an AWS system, or for a Linux system, or for a Windows system, or for a Mac system. Another thing you do is be a freelancer. Be creative to get that experience. Set up labs in your house. Be creative. Being a freelancer means that you go out and actually fix people's stuff, and you put that on your resume. Like, you gotta do the work. When you get in the interview, you'll be able to tell them exactly what you did, how you did it, and some of the challenges that you had, so that they'll see, like, this person, not only are they knowledgeable of what's going on with AWS or cloud technologies or with applying stakes to a box, but they've done it several times. This person is the real deal. They also have a Security Plus. I want to hire this person. So if you're a student, right now is the time to get experience. I'm currently taking another one. I'm currently taking my bachelor's degree of science in cybersecurity degree. I'm in my last semester. Again, like, right now is the time as a student to get your experience. Get the experience right now. Don't wait. Do not wait. Don't wait till you get that piece of paper. The piece of paper is not magical. It's not magical. It's an add-on to your skill set. That's what they're looking for. The degree, the certification is an add-on to what you already know how to do. Let me see. I got some other stuff here. X-Men says, does your security control book cover Rev 5 controls? Yes. Yes, it covers Rev 5 controls. Rev 4 was kind of on its way out when I started writing it. So I didn't write it too that much long ago. And it also has an audio version of this on Audible. I'm trying to put it on other platforms right now. But right now you can get it Convocourses, convocourses.net. I sell it directly from my site. The hard copy, the ebook, and the audiobook available right now. And there's a course for it. Okay, let me see. What is your outlook on? Wait, I think I skipped one. Where can I apply for the jobs? What is your? Let me answer this one first. What is your outlook on certifications? I mean, I've got a ton of certifications, you know, so I'm not going to sit here and crap all over certifications, and be a hypocrite about it. Um, I I think certifications are awesome. I have a CISSP, I have a CGRC, I've got a Security Plus. I had to take it twice because I had to take the old one and the new one because I was teaching it at one time. I have other certs like a Linux Plus, and so I like certifications. Right now, I'm about to take another one. I'm about to do cloud and like AWS certification. So I like certifications. I think that they're very useful. However, they're part of a pecking order. They are not the top thing that you should be doing. It should be experience. Experience is number one. Like the number one thing you should be focusing your energy on, especially if you're a beginner, is experience. Experience is the top thing that you can do and have, and where you should be focusing your energy and being creative on how you can do projects and do the work. Like, I mean, make labs, make yourself a freelancer. You've got to get that experience under your belt. But that said, once you get more competitive, that degree, that certification, those are awesome. A lot of the people that talk crap about certifications, you'll notice that they have a certification, and you should ask yourself why. Why why are they? And I'm not, listen, shout out to all my peers, okay? They're so smart. They're so awesome. But ask yourself this. If they don't like certifications and they don't like degrees or whatever it is, do they have one? Sometimes, like, do what we do and what we say. Like, see, look at what we're doing and then copy what we're doing. It'll give you a great insight. What we're doing is what you should pay a very close attention to, in addition to what we say. So certifications are good. Are you going to be able to just get a certification, get a job suddenly? Possible, but improbable without experience. Okay, I've been talking for about an hour and 30 minutes. I've got a few more minutes left. Somebody said, where can I apply for the job? Where can I apply for the job? I don't understand the question. Maybe they're talking about the jobs on the whitehouse.gov. I would say I don't have a link directly on me. Let me see if I can find a real quick link for you. I think that's what they're talking about. White House. What all I did was I went to Google. Let me show you what I'm doing here. I will show you what I'm doing so you can follow along if you have to be watching me. I'm typing in what I'm on Google, and I'm gonna type in White House. Don't go to whitehouse.com. Whitehouse.gov. White House, and then I'm typing 500K jobs. And then you'll see a bunch of news articles where they're talking about it, and a lot of these articles have a direct link to what we're talking about. So let's go to this one, IT Brew blog, and Service for America is the keyword that they're using, and it takes you to this website right here. Service for America is a cyber is serving your country, and they're trying to make it like patriotic and, hey, come and get these jobs. And here you go. You have federal cyber jobs, federal tech jobs, and federal AI jobs. Look, well, I got to click this one. What is this? Look at this. Look at all these jobs. Now, granted, some of them are in the military, but you've got some for the Department of Justice, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, FDIC, the FDIC. You've got naval. There's just a ton of jobs here. IT specialist. So they're promoting jobs across the entire federal government. U.S. Army cyber, and I bet you state jobs are also looking for people. Okay, this one's for the Army, for the Office of National Cyber Director, DISA, Defense Information Security Systems Agency. You've got DISA again, Department of the Air Force, DISA, U.S. Army, DISA. These are all cyber jobs. Let's look for technical jobs. Let's see what they have here. Federal technical jobs. Bureau of Naval Personnel, Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command. Now, you get the idea. There's just a ton of jobs here for not just military, but for all throughout the Department of State. Look at that. This is a good one right here. These guys, they have jobs all over the world. Let's look at this one right here. This job is for information technology specialist for InfoSec network and APSW. So they're looking for a job from now until December of this year, and they're paying between $68,000 and $191,000. Pay scale is a GS9 to 15, GS15. Telework eligible, yes. Current policy requires employees to report to duty station a minimum of 2 times per pay period. Not bad. Occasional travel, 25% or less. Clearance, top secret. Now, the thing about these clearances is sometimes they will give you the clearance. Some of these jobs, I've noticed like a lot of people ask me about clearances, and sometimes it's because they don't know how clearances work. Here's the thing. So a lot of times they want you to be able to be eligible to get a clearance. That means you have to be a U.S. citizen. If you are required to get a secret or top secret clearance, you have to be eligible, means that you are a U.S. citizen. That's what it means. Either born in the U.S. or you are a naturalized citizen, but either one works. But not all these jobs require a secret or top secret clearance. Some of them require a public trust, which you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to get a public trust. I believe you do have to be permanent resident or something like that, depending on the job. Larry says certs are helpful to clear HR requirements or ATS scan. Sucks that this is the case, but it's the reality. 2 identical candidates apply for the same job, and one with the cert will get forwarded most often. That's true, and it really depends on the job requirements, because a lot of times, especially with government jobs, I think they're trying to be more lax on that, right? That's what this whole initiative is all about, is trying to like lower the bar as far as the degree portion of it or the certification part of it. That's why I say go ahead and apply for these jobs. Like you're not going to lose nothing by applying for them. But Larry is right. The power of the cert is if you have 2 identical candidates for that job. Like all it's seen is the paperwork, but one has a security plus and one does not. The person with the security plus is going to be looked at more favorably. And just like a degree, if you have a degree, especially if you have a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, or mathematics, versus somebody who has an identical experience level but does not have a degree, there's going to be certain job opportunities that the person with the degree might be more eligible for, such as management type positions. It's just my experience and things that I've seen. So just keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you can't get a job without a degree or a certification. Are you familiar with the Navy Qualified Validator role? I've heard of that before. I know that role in particular it requires very specific security certifications. I want to say it's the CISA and a couple of other certifications. I'm familiar with it. And then there's like some special training that they go to. Is that right? Somebody asked, how do I get a security clearance in South Carolina? Yeah, so there's jobs that will hire you, and then as long as you're eligible to get one, they will do the background check for you and get you that background check. Somebody said, Major says, I want to start a cybersecurity movement in my country, then in the whole of Africa. What country are you in? Because there's a couple countries that are pretty hot for IT on the continent. Um, there's a couple countries that are doing well. I mean, if I was in the continent, I would be applying for a ton of jobs in my country, and then I'd be looking for outside the country. Like, let's say I'm in Nigeria, and the jobs are. I would look in not only Nigeria but also in the neighboring countries to see if I can get some jobs there too. And in a lot of ways, some of the countries, some of the continents that have closer countries, like different countries all grouped together, like Europe and Africa, the continent has a bunch of countries all there. You have an advantage because you can go to that. You can you can look outside of your own country. The US is so gigantic, where the nation of the US is so gigantic that you can't just go to another country. It's going to be another state. But you know I don't know if you guys have been to like Europe, but like Europe is like, if you go 70 miles north in anywhere in Europe, 100 miles north anywhere in Europe, you're going to end up in another country. Whereas in the US, you're still in the same state. So one of the advantages is that if you want to work in another country with different rules or whatever, if you are in the continent of Africa or the continent of Europe or Eurasia or whatever you have to be, you have an advantage where you can actually go to another country, go work for them. It's a little harder for us than that aspect. I mean, at the same time, we got a lot of jobs here, so it's definitely amazing here for jobs and business and stuff. Um, the system is designed to promote a fair competition amongst candidates. Yeah, fair, but like you said, if you have two identical candidates and one has a cert and one doesn't, one's going to get looked at more. One's going to get looked at more. And somebody said, contractors like Raytheon, they'll sponsor you if your resume and background are good. Yeah. Yep, they'll sponsor. That's the word I was looking for, sponsorship. They'll sponsor you to get that degree. I mean, to get that certificate, to get that clearance, security clearance. Let's see. Oh, they'll sponsor you for a degree too, actually. Getting into the field myself, love your content, very helpful. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Connor. Appreciate that. Let's see here. More comments. Somebody said, over the last few years, I've seen people take leave in the government for private sector money talks. Yeah, it's just pretty common. Like, you get into the government as a GS something or other, or you're in the military or whatever the case may be. You start seeing that money on the outside. I remember just going back, like being in the military doing IT for about 4 years. And I don't know, I think I was an E5, and E5 at the time made about 35,000 a year. But they pay for your housing. You don't have to you don't have they pay for your gym time, their benefits are second to none, but they don't pay you a lot. But then somebody gets out and they're making double or triple what you're making. It's very tempting to leave immediately. I mean, it is very tempting. So Larry brought up a great point, is that one of the reason why there's a huge shortfall, there's a huge gap in amount of IT workers we have in the government, even in contracting, is that they just don't, their pay isn't as good as the private sector. And that's a fact. Like when I was working in the private sector, they do pay better. The private sector pays better. It goes like military in the public sector, working for the government. GS, they make a little bit more. They're civil servants, but they're not in the military, but they're paid directly by the Navy or the DISA or Department of State or whatever. They make a little bit more depending on their rank than their military counterparts. They both work in the public sector. Then you got contractors who work with the government. They're in the private sector, but they're working for the public sector. That's what I do. A contractor. They make significantly more than people in the public sector getting paid directly from the military. There's pros and cons to all this stuff. And then there's the other one is that you have nothing to do with the public sector, the government. And those guys probably, a lot of times they'll make more. Doing the same job, they make a little bit more. And I worked in all of those sectors. Well, with the exception of a GS. I was never a GS. But in all of these sectors, there's pluses and minuses to each one. And I would say the biggest one is that if you're in the public sector working directly for the Department of State or Department of Justice or DOD and you are GS, the job is very, very secure. They don't just fire people out of nowhere. It takes a little act of Congress to fire certain people in as a GS. And then the military, they don't want to fire anybody. They'll punish you, but they're not going to try. They're not going to go out of their way to lose soldiers or airmen or Marines or Guardians or whatever the hell they call in the Space Force. They're not going to go out of their way to lose people. They will punish you, but they will not. They're going to do what they can to put you on the right course. As opposed to contractor, they'll fire you for sneezing wrong. They don't give a damn, I mean, they're not trying to lose people because it's hard to get people in there. But, if you're not performing or something's not right, then, they will definitely let you go. Working for the public sector as a contractor, it is a little bit more stable than the pure private sector. Because that one, if you're not performing in the private sector, they have to let you go because their money is involved. If you're not making money, you're losing money. So if you're not performing, they have to let you go. They have to, because otherwise you're affecting everybody's money. So, contractor, they'll try to keep you. They'll say, look, let's sit down. Let's talk about this. And look, here's what's going wrong. In your last evaluation, this is what happened. The customer's not quite satisfied. We got to fix this. They'll sit you down and they'll talk to you. We got to fix this, and if your attitude's right, they'll keep you. They'll even put you in another, like, look, you're not good in this position. We'll put you over here. Right. And if you can't perform there, then they're like, okay, well, we got to let them go. We have to let them go. So they usually try to keep you in the private in the contracting public sector. When you're a contract at Raytheon or at Northrop at these big companies that have these contracts with the government, they'll try to keep you. But let me see here. And I'm about done, guys. I'm about 2 hours in. I normally do about 2 hours. So I'm almost done. Next week, you guys want to be here for next week because I'm going to be interviewing the one and only Professor Black Ops next week. So stay tuned. I know people love when I interview people. Those are my best performing podcasts and lives and stuff. So X-Men says, have you ever worked multiple jobs at once in GRC? Some refer to this as job stacking. If so, can you talk about your experience? Yes, I've done this before. Another word for it is called overemployed. And I did it for GRC. And I've done it a couple times, actually. I did it a couple times. What I'll say about it is I'll talk about the pros first. Like, obviously you're going to make a crazy amount of money. It's a crazy amount of money very fast. Especially, you get two jobs that are paying you $60, $70 an hour. I mean, you're making a crazy amount of money. So that's the good thing about it. The bad thing, that's about the only good thing, is the money. The bad thing is, oh my God, it's stressful. I mean, it is crazy. It's so much work. To where that's all you're doing is work, and you can't do extra. I wouldn't be able to write books. I wouldn't have time for that. I mean, I didn't have time to do nothing else but work. And it was very, very stressful. Both times I did it. I will say this, if you're going to do it, make sure that your family, if you're whoever you're living with, is on board with it, because you're not going to really have time for them as much. Especially if you're doing a lot of hours. I did it twice, and the first time I did it completely wrong. I had two almost full-time jobs, and oh my God, it was stressful. And there's laws against that, right? So you don't want to have conflict of interest. That's a big no. Don't have that. Means you can't, if you have two companies, company A and B, and they're both working for Department of Navy or something, that's a conflict of interest, because these are two competing companies. Or if you work for the Department of Navy as a GS, and you work as a contractor, and they don't, it's a conflict of interest, right? So you don't want to do stuff like that. It's illegal, especially if you are contracted to not do that. Like, sometimes it's in the contract that you cannot work for this other competitor, or you can't work for, so that's one thing. Don't violate the laws. Another thing I would say is have one dominant one, and one that knows what's up. What I mean to say is, the smartest thing you can do is have one that it's a solid job. This job you're gonna keep is full time. The other job that's part time, and let them know, I can only do it X amount of hours a week. Be real with them. I can only do after my main job. Don't lie to them. Be like, look, I got a main job here. I can only work after these main hours, between the hours of 4 and 7 or whatever, and on weekends, and maybe Fridays. If, let's say, you're off on Fridays, whatever the case may be, I can work on Friday. Be very clear with them, with the other job, the part-time job, how many hours and what's your flexibility. That way there's no conflicts of because with GRC jobs especially, you got to do a lot of, they're expecting you to do a lot of meetings. And so sometimes the meetings will overlap with one another, and you got to make sure in the beginning, like, let them know clearly, like, these meetings are on these days. I can't do meetings on Fridays and Thursdays, whatever it is, right? Be very clear. Do not have conflict of interest. Make sure your family knows about it. Read their rules, because they have different rules for every organization. Some rules are very strict and say, do not do this. You're not allowed to work for any company. You between these hours, you're supposed to be working for us, and you put it in writing. You can't use information from this company that's proprietary for this other company, right? Obviously, they're going to have certain rules in there that if you read it, it'll tell you exactly what's going on. My current job says it's okay if I'm overemployed, but of course, I got to get my work done, and you need to let them know. You have to tell them, hey, I'm working for this other organization over here. They said, look, as long as we know about it, it's none, that's it. Of course, you can't violate their rules or whatever, as far as proprietary information, or, you got to get work done, but we got to know about it. So make sure you know their rules. Make sure your family knows about it, because you're probably going to be spending a lot of extra time doing that stuff. No conflict of interest. And that's it. Be very forthcoming about it. The pros is it makes a lot of money very quickly. But yeah, I would have a time limit. That was another smart thing that I did the second time I did, is there was a time limit that I only did it for like 3 months. I said, okay, Here's how long I can do it, and then after that, I'm done. Right? Don't If you do it never ending, you're gonna get burned out pretty fast, especially if it's a high pace. One of them's a high paced job. Yeah, so I've done it before. It was twice. The first time was absolutely brutal, was my experience, and I vowed I would never do it again. The second time was better because there was boundaries, and this other job knew, okay, we can't get them from here to here, and all I was doing was I was writing policies and stuff, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Let me see here. I think my cousin's doing that right now, doing the overemployment stuff. Yeah, it's pretty good to do temporarily. Let me see here. Somebody said, yeah, I agree. AI is not ready to take over the workforce. Absolutely not. It's hard to find support where I live. Jobs for IT are hard to find. Yeah, you might want to start looking for some remote jobs. Remote jobs are much harder to find, they're much harder to find, and then once you do find them, they're very, very competitive, but they do exist. They absolutely do exist. I'm in a area right now where I'm very rural, very provincial area. There's not many jobs or opportunities here. It's one of the worst places to work in Colorado. But I'm working remotely, so if you can find a job like that, like a remote position, and they have data entry job. Now you got to be careful. There's a ton of scams out there that they don't ever pay for a job. They don't ever pay for a job. Like if somebody is saying, "Oh yeah, you can work for us, but you got to pay us this X amount, X, Y, and Z," then that's partly a scam. Um, but do they exist? There are remote jobs out there that you can do. So get try to get your foot in the door that way. It's going to be hard because they're very, very, very competitive. Hundreds of people immediately start applying for them. I've been working. I got 20 years experience. It's still hard for me to get those jobs, but they do exist. Let me see. I am looking for the last bit of questions because I'm about to close this thing out. It's been about 2 hours. Sorry, I'm in high school. I'm a high school graduate, and I want to start my journey in cyber, but I don't know how. In high school, from high school, I would start with projects, be a freelancer, get to know as much IT as possible. You need to know the foundations of IT in order to protect IT. So you want to start there, get a job if you can, working for organizations like cable companies, internet companies to install cable and stuff because they'll teach you a whole bunch of stuff about basic IT. If you have the time, money, and resources, go to school and then start applying for go to college and start applying for internships and student work programs and apprenticeships and stuff like that. That'll also get the name of the game is experience at this point. Knowledge and experience is what you want to build on. You got time. You don't have to rush or stress out, but definitely start to get your foot in the door, and talk to other people who are like your uncle, cousin, something like that in IT. Talk to them about it and ask them like, hey, how do you like it? What is where can I start? Try to get them as a mentor because a lot of times, you have a lot of resources around you. You just got to reach out to them, and they'll be more than very willing to help you out. If I were taking the GRC path, would it land me a job in healthcare hospital companies? Okay, this is my last question. And I get a lot of people from the healthcare industry asking me this question. And the answer is absolutely there's a path for healthcare professionals to get in the GRC. The reason why I say this is because GRC is extremely important in the healthcare industry, whether you're in the emergency room, you're a CNA, certified nursing person, or a medical biller. All you guys are subject to something called HIPAA. So HIPAA requires that you protect patient information. And that's a part of cybersecurity. It's a part of resilience. It's a part of, it includes things like contingency planning, physical security. All of those things are wrapped up into the protection of patient information, right? So there is definitely a path for you. And in fact, there's a certification that I always recommend to people if you are in this field, if you're in that space. And it's one, okay, I always forget what it's called. HISSP? ISP. Give me a second here. Let me just Google it. HCISPP. I totally messed that one up. But yeah, here it is right here. It's on, if you want to search for it, if you're just listening to me, then just type in HCISPP, and it's called the Healthcare Security Certification. And it is, look, check out these domains. And Larry, thank you so much for that $10, man. I really appreciate you. But check out what it's teaching here. Let me just accept all cookies real quick. I'm always on the site. Domain 1, healthcare industry. All right, you're already in the healthcare industry. You're going to ace that part. Domain 2, information governance in healthcare. That means IT infrastructure. That means protecting the healthcare devices and medical devices and things like that, like the network. That's the management of the IT, the infosec of the IT of the healthcare facility. Information technology in healthcare, regulations and standards standards environment. That's HIPAA. Privacy and security in healthcare, HIPAA again. Risk management and risk assessments, third party management. So that's what you're going to be learning if you go for the HCISPP. And you already have a leg up on somebody like me who has very little exposure to the healthcare industry. You being in the healthcare, and you're already a healthcare professional. You know what doctors need. You, off the top of your head, know certain medical devices that are used often. You know certain software, Epic and all the other ones that are used. You probably use those on a regular basis. I don't. So you actually have an advantage if you were to go from healthcare to this field of GRC. GRC has many different aspects in every industry. Every industry has its own flavor of GRC, and with different regulations and standards that they have to abide by, and healthcare is no exception to that. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you so much, Larry, for that. And Larry says, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button. Bruce deserves a bigger audience. Thanks, Larry. I appreciate you, man. And thanks, Larry. Shout out to Larry again for giving me a great contact with Professor Black Ops, who I'll be interviewing hopefully next week. Hey, man, we'll get together. I sent you my email, so get in contact with me, and we'll talk about how we're going to do this interview next week. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate everybody. Special shout out to Larry.